Most of us have not read the book in a very long time, and I think the primary reason why we don't read is not because we're lazy or we procrastinate or we have fell out of the habit, but it's actually because we haven't found the books that speak to our experiences, to our passions, and that sort of reflects to us on the page. So in this video, I want to share books that center Muslim characters written by Muslim authors targeted for the Muslim community. I'll share a few novels for adults, for teenagers, YA books, and then a few for children. And without further ado, let's get started. First up are novels for adult, and we go with The Reluctant Fundamentalist by Mohamed, who is a Pakistani writer. This book is about a Pakistani man who graduated from an affluent college, got a very high-paying job at a financial company, but then 9/11 happens and he is forced to go back to Pakistan, and the story is told while he is in Pakistan, sitting down at a cafe with an American tourist, and he tells him how did he end up back home. The story covers topics like identity, immigration, and the complexities of the Muslim experience post 9/11, and it's told in second person. And I think this is my favorite part of the novel because it uses the you a lot. So he is sitting down, the main character, across the table from this American tourist, and he tells him, oh, don't pay attention to those customers in the back, focus on my story here. So the mode of the story shifts from the story, which is the history of this character that was in America and now in Pakistan, and then the current time that they are sitting in that cafe, and the things that are happening around that cafe, whether it's, you know, the sun is setting down, or the beggars passing by and asking for money, girls who are trying to get attention of the tourist, and a whole other things that are happening inside that conversation. I remember this is the first book that I read from Mohsen Hassan, and then I started just reading everything that he wrote. And his writing is much more like Hemingway because it's very economical and compact and very to the point. There is very little flesh between his point that he's trying to make and the words that are on the paper. So very punchy, fast, and very clear. So nowhere in the story you can feel lost or you don't know what's going on in terms of events or the order, because it's very well structured, very clearly written, and simply illustrated. The second book is Grave of Hearts by Abdulrazak Gurnah. This is a Nobel Prize winner, and Abdulrazak Gurnah is probably one of the best writers of our time. This is a story about a young kid who's becoming of age in Zanzibar, and he is discovering the politics of the country, but also his family history. His family or his parents are separated, and he does not know why. Every day he takes this very long walk to his father where he provides him food, and he sleeps behind this store or grocery shop, and he doesn't know why is he living in the conditions that is he living. So the whole time he's investigating why is he living in the conditions that is he living, and then he ends up in England for whatever reason that I will not reveal, and he is then an immigrant who is searching for his identity, and he feels a sense of betrayal, and he lives with his uncle, and that comes with its own living conditions, and then I'll leave it to you read it. The book is relevant because for us who are in the diaspora, who live in England, the United States, Canada, or anywhere else away from what we call home, whether we were born there or our parents lived there and talk about it constantly, and we feel that sense of something in us that's missing. For me especially, I was born in Yemen and grew up there until I was 13 or 14, then moved to the United States and started high school here. So the whole time when I was learning English and growing up here, I felt like there was a sense or a piece of me missing, and I kept searching for it in friends. I kept searching it in living to social expectations that did not go side to side with my cultural traditions or even religious traditions, until I one time thought, okay, I'm traveling back to Yemen because that's where my missing piece will be. Traveled back to Yemen in 2015 and discovered that for immigrants, for people in the diaspora, no matter where you search, that piece will never be fulfilled. You go back to your home country, whether you were born there or not, and you feel like you also are missing that piece. And you think that piece is probably back in New York City. That's what I thought for me, or back where you lived, because that's where your family lives. And you come back here and that piece is still missing, because for us, you live in a country that you can still technically say it's yours, but there is a connection for you in another country, but then your loved ones live here, your home feels like it's over there, and you can never put these two things together. So there is a price, is what I'm trying to say to migrating. The price is you live a better life and better conditions, but then there's this emotional tax that you pay for what you gain. And I'm not complaining. This is a much better life for me than most Yemenis who live in Yemen or did not have the opportunity that I had. And I didn't even work for this. My dad brought us here, and I'm not complaining. But then I'm still paying the tax, and then my kids will have a very different experience than I did. But back to the book, Grave of Hearts, I highly recommend reading it. It's a very emotional read, especially for me. If you're interested in reading that pain of exile and searching for who you are, that's the book you should read. Finally, Gaza Writes Back. This is a book by Palestinian writers, young Palestinian writers. It's a collection of short stories that were written in English, not translated, I think, except 2 of them. And it was edited by Rafat al-Ari, who became famous for his poem, If I Must Die. And the book talks about the Palestinian experience, especially in Gaza. Many of us know Gaza are not made up of people who were born in Gaza. A lot of them were pushed from the outskirts, from the cities, from the towns around Gaza into Gaza. So many of them have connection to land that are already occupied, and some of them can see their land from Gaza, from the borders of Gaza. So none of us know those stories. I mean, the stories that we know now are the bombings and the people who are getting killed, and those stories to have their own special attention, and I get it. But then also, how did we end up here? Is this what these stories cover? I personally bought this book, then avoided reading it for like 3-4 months because I knew it had a lot of pain that I probably did not want to deal with. But once I started reading it, I was very, very glad that I started reading it, and I actually regretted not reading it early because it gave me a perspective on what it means to be a Palestinian living in Gaza and the day-to-day. Because right now all we know is about the numbers and the destruction and the pain, but then we do not get the personal point of view from the day-to-day. Still, the quality was tier 1, and I enjoyed it, and I highly recommend it. Everyone who's interested in the Palestinian struggle should read it. Next, I will go into the YA section for teens, and first up is S.K. Ali, Love from A to Z. A title like this will throw you off a little bit because it will tell you, oh, this is a title who is, you know, the typical love story of 2 Muslim kids who are getting in love and breaking all the rules that you can think of. The trope of, you know, this appeal to the white gaze. And this book, it's not what you expect. Aside from that, it's very, very well written from an author who is a New York Times bestseller who won awards. It's actually very pleasantly written in a way where I would call Islamic. It just has what we call in Arabic or in the Islamic tradition, haya, which is that sense of shyness that, you know, it doesn't cross the lines, is not vulgar, is very PG-13, or the PG-13 that we expect a PG-13 would be, not the modern PG-13. And I would recommend this to my daughter when she becomes 13 or 14 or a teenager. But it's also not all about love. It also tackles the topics like Islamophobia and illness and how young people deal with social issues, and they view life from their perspective as second generation or third generation Americans. It's inspiring, it's uplifting, and it's just beautiful to read. I mean, it's not a book that we afterwards is very hopeful. Next is Mirage by Sumaya Daoud, and this is not a book I have physically anymore. I actually think I lost it. I don't see it in my bookshelves anymore, but I read it a while ago, and it's a sci-fi, which was one of my first Muslim sci-fi, and it's not Islamic in terms of like topics, but then the tradition, it's there. The cultural fabric is still there, although it's not about Islam at all. It's very sci-fi as you can ever get. It's about a poor girl who becomes the body double of this princess who oversees a government or a nation or an empire that's very brutal. And so it covers topics like colonialism and control and all these social issues that sometimes even we see today. And this is what I like about sci-fi. It talks about colonialization. It talks about heavy topics, but not directly. It builds a world of its own that you can literally think that, oh, this is just a mirror of the time that we are living in. And it gives you a sense of, this is not weird, or this is not, just because people are flying or are doing sci-fi things doesn't mean is unrealistic. Now I want to recommend a few books for children. I have a 3-year-old daughter and I love her immensely, and we read all the time, not as much as we should, but then when we read, although I sometimes read for her books that are not her age, but then she still pays attention. She loves the graphics, she knows that I'm telling a story, and she pays attention, and sometimes it's as little as just repeating the line that I say from the picture book. First is The Proudest Blue, which is a story about hijab by Mohamed, who is an Olympic winner, and then also she co-wrote it with S.K. Ali. It's about hijab and being proud of hijab, and I think is a very, very beautiful book. for children especially. And it's about these two sisters, and one of the kids, or the younger sister, is her first day of wearing the hijab, and it just goes through the journey of what it means to have a hijab and how to be proud of it. And the hijab is a symbol for Muslim women, but it's also something that they have to, or they view as part of their identity, and not only as a religious fulfillment or practice that they have to adhere to, although that's important as well, but it becomes part of them. And I think this book communicates that idea very, very well, and it's just heartwarming, especially for a children's book to cover such a complicated topic. Next is Mr. Jamal's Gratitude Glasses by Asma Hussein. This is a publisher called Ruqayya Bookshelf, and they have a bunch of Muslim books that cover a whole range of topics. And this book is a teacher who sees that the children or his students are very negative and very pessimistic, and he goes to the store and he buys these glasses and he calls them the gratitude glasses, and every time he wears them, the idea is that he sees the world in a new light. He sees the things that he has to appreciate, as opposed to complaining about the things that he doesn't have. So he goes back to his students and they're complaining about everything and anything they see in front of them, and he introduces them to this concept, or he walks through one student after another, putting those glasses on and going through that transformation. So it's a very simple read, and it teaches children to be gratitude for what they already have, especially living in a first world country, in a country like America or the UK, where most of us have more than what we actually need, and we tend to take for granted all the things that we already have. So it's a nice reminder to be grateful for what you already have. The last book is The Elephant's Makeover, which is by Roxana Khan, and it's a book about this elephant who hates the way she looks. She hates her stomach, she hates her legs, she hates her big ears and her long nose, and she thinks that everybody is making fun of her, or the other animals are making fun of her, and so she decides to go to each animal and swap a body part. So she would go to the mole and swipe her nose with the mole, then goes to the cat and swipe their legs, and so on and so forth. And the idea is that she wants to create this perfect image that will make her, or make others like her. Now I will leave the transformation and the reaction of others on her new part, or her new body parts and image that she builds for herself, until you read it. But it's a book that talks about social expectations and how we should teach our children to love themselves for what they are and who they are and what they already look like. It's gentle, it's simple, it's powerful, and I highly recommend it to everyone. And I've actually read this book multiple times to students in mosques and in schools, because I think it's a very important concept to young kids, especially the ones that I know who are living in the environment that they're living in, with social media and the social expectations and the body images. I think it's important. Now, if you are interested in writing your own children's book, or your own novel, or YA book, then I highly recommend a video that I recorded about this book, one book that will teach you more than a writing degree, which I have, and I think that this $10 of a book, or cost of a book, will get you 80% of what you learn in 2 years. Go watch it. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and until next time.